Hey guys, it's Trent with Vulgar BMX, and I'm here today to show you how to swap out your bottom bracket. A lot of people are riding around, you're feeling a little bit of crunchiness, it's not riding as smooth, your cranks don't spin as easy. That means it's time to replace. I'm going to show you guys the easy way to do it today. What you're going to need for the job is a 17 millimeter if that's the size for your back hub, a 6 mil to take the cranks off, some grease to grease everything, a big dumb screwdriver you can hammer on, one you don't care about, obviously a hammer, and a piece of wood, and a bottom bracket. First we're going to loosen up the wheel. We're just doing this so we can get the chain off and get that crank off. So now we got the chain off, we can grab our 6 mil Allen and remove the crank. Slide that crank off. Don't lose any pieces that you're having behind your sprocket or anything. A lot of people have a dust cover there or anything. On this bike I don't have one. I just have the adapter because this is a 19 millimeter. So now we got to get the cranks out. A lot of people put the bolt back on and hit it, but if you have a piece of wood, that works pretty great too. This one's well greased, so it just popped out nice and easy. I'll slide it out of here. Now it's time to tighten up this back wheel. Since I don't have the frame just by itself, I have everything built up on it. I'm going to make sure this is sturdy so when I'm beating on it, I can get these bearings in straight. Now it's time to take this thing to the ground and get the old bearings out. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to stick this screwdriver in here, push that center spacer down, and hammer out the bearing. I did a time lapse because I thought that'd take a while, but it came out pretty easy. Next step is going to be cleaning out all the gunk that's sitting inside of your frame. You're going to do this on both sides. And then what I like to do is add a little bit of grease in there so that your bearings come out pretty easy, like these ones did. It's time to put the bottom bracket in. I got a Haro bottom bracket right here. This is a pretty solid one. I wouldn't spend any more money on any of the other ones. 19 millimeter. Kind of my trick for this is I've put these in the freezer and that shrinks them up and they go in easier. So what we're going to do is just take one of them right now, set it right in there, and then we're going to get our board and hammer and just work it in. We're going to try and tap around it evenly so that it goes in evenly. We don't want a crooked bearing. It's going to be ruined. You're going to have to get a new one. All right. She's sitting in nice and flush now. So I'll flip it over and then we'll put in the spacer and do the other side. Now we're going to put our spacer in. What this is going to do is it's going to stop you from over tightening this. What happens when you over tighten this is the inside of the bearing gets pushed out and then it is off center, ruins the bearing. So this just prevents you from clamping in too hard and having that happen. Freezing these is really the biggest trick to doing this the easy way. If you don't freeze it, it's going to be a big pain in the butt. But just like we did with the other side, now that we've put the spacer in, we're going to hammer that on evenly with a piece of wood. Now that that's in there, you want to check and make sure that the spacer has a little bit of wiggle room, and it does. So now I can grease up the inside of these bearings and put my cranks back on. It's always a good idea while you have these apart to just clean them and re-grease them. It'll make it ride a lot nicer. You don't have to worry about little tiny pieces of sand and dirt in there. They're gonna make it crunchy. And grease the inside of these. Your splines will give you a lot of creaks if they're not greased and tightened properly. I'd say a good 60% of crank noise comes from this. Pretty easy fix. Don't forget to put the chain over, otherwise you're not going to be able to ride your bike. And slide the crank back on. It's all nice and greased up, so it should go right on. And then we'll tighten these guys up. Put the chain back on and she'll be ready to ride. So you want to make sure that it's not too tight. The spacer helps that not happen, but if you do crank down on them too much, you're not going to be able to spin the cranks as easy also. Now, since we tightened this wheel so we can hammer down on the bike easier, we got to re-loosen it so we can adjust the wheel forward and put the chain back on. And just put it back to where you want it, snug it up. And that's how you swap a bottom bracket.